Welcome to the Divine Radiance Project with your host, Stacey Turner, and co-host, Emma McDonald, where we share all about reclaiming your radiance as women in business, holistic health, money, mindset, and juggling it all around mum life. A place for women to learn about financial independence, entrepreneurship, and balance. From women who aren't scared to speak their mind and their truth. It's time to shine your brightest self and be the lighthouse. Welcome back to the Divine Radiance Project. Thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode. I'm very excited to be joined today by the beautiful Janene Tealby, and we're going to be talking about a topic that's very close to my heart. Both of us connected, I guess, through this topic specifically and through our beautiful mentor and teacher that brought this into our lives. And now, I don't know if I want to say protege, but Janene is very much our mentor's protege. And so I wanted to get her on to talk about this beautiful topic that I will be sharing with you momentarily. So Janene Tealby is an innate and instinctive meditation and non-linear movement guide and coach. Janene has a passion for embodied practices that support you to explore ways to deepen your connection with yourself, celebrate your individuality, and dance with the rhythms of life. Janene is also a mother of 3 and a leader in a corporate environment. And I will share your Instagram handle in our show notes so that people can find you later on once they've heard how incredible you are and your story and delve deeper into that. So thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to connect with you again and, to have this opportunity to chat about instinctive and innate meditation.
Awesome. So I would love for you to share a bit more about kind of yourself, your background, what led you to innate and instinctive meditation in the first place and made you who you are today. Not a big question, just small.
Probably a few barrels to that. It's an interesting question because I think for me, my traditional answer to that question would have been, I live in Brisbane and I play many roles. I'm a daughter, a sister, a mum of 3 beautiful girls, 2 crazy groodles, and 2 very patient cats. And I would have maybe listed some of the other roles that I do, like my work and the coaching work that I do, because for a long time, that would have been as much as I would have been able to have said about who I am. And the reason for that is that I'm somebody who's functioned with social anxiety for as long as I can possibly remember. And so what that looked like for me when I was a child who became the teen, who became the adult, I had to tick all of the boxes. I had to behave, which I did most of the time. I went to university. I've had a corporate career, marriage, children, home ownership, like all of the societal things. And I realized that I was holding myself to such high standards that I thought that I was never enough. If you've ever experienced social anxiety, there's this really innate sense of feeling awkward and like you're never going to belong in a space. And it can mean that you shy away and you very much try and hold yourself back. It meant that I never stopped running. I never stopped trying to achieve. It also meant that there was probably nobody in the world who could be meaner to me than I was to me in my own mind. And I had absolutely no idea of who I was. Intuition was a foreign concept. I took the steps that I needed to take to be okay. And I hit 36 and it was a real turning point for me. It wouldn't be a surprise to you that my body screamed at me. Literally, it did everything it could do to say stop. And when I was 36, I was just going back to work after I'd had my 3rd daughter. And I was exhausted. I ended up 5 kilos underweight, looking at an autoimmune diagnosis. I had food intolerances coming out of my ears. My body was as run down and as tired from all of the running as it could be. And so like the studious person that I am, I Googled and it said meditation. And I'm like, okay, this sounds okay. Because my first experience of meditation, strangely, was in an outback town of Roma and here in Queensland when I was in like year 7, when meditation definitely wasn't the most common thing that you would do at school. We had a relief teacher, and it was like one of the most positive memories of my whole entire childhood. So I'm like, yes, I can do this. And I downloaded an app, and it was not the same experience as what I could remember. I I stuck at it, and I would say stuck at it for about 6 months. It was hard work and it was anxiety promoting. Like, I spent 15 to 20 minutes every day trying to battle as to how I could put my thoughts on clouds, how I could see blank walls, how I could step away from all that was going on inside my body. And I ended up giving up. And it was probably about 2 years later when a lovely lady at work, Nat, she said, "Oh my gosh, there's this stress and anxiety workshop I'm going to on the weekend." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't have anything on. Can I come too?" And it was run by our teacher, Alison Potts. And I remember at the end going, what is this witchery? What is this magic? What is this experience that I've had? And I remember Nat looking at me and she's like, I have never seen you so settled and so still. And it was that moment that I think my meditation journey changed. It was also the moment that my life journey changed and everything really started to shift, because I think, as you would very well know, once you start to drop into this approach, this style of meditation, it's not just a meditation practice. It is a whole of life practice. It's a completely whole way of being with yourself in the world. And for me, what it meant was that I learned to see and value and listen, and most importantly, love and care for myself in ways that I have never experienced across my whole remembered life before that. I can now answer the question, who am I? And you will get a range of things from, I'm the person who can sit and just delight in the sparkle of sunlight through the trees. Like, I'm at home in nature, being hugged by a forest. Like, it is so very different. I'm also very aware of what's important to me in the work that I do and how I want to show up in that space. And it's really changed, I suppose, for me, the way that I show up with myself, the way that I'm able to show up as a parent, but also it has been the most amazing, almost leadership journey that wasn't a leadership journey, in terms of how I'm able to show up for the people that I'm privileged enough to lead. And I think for me, sort of flicking back through, it's also meant that I'm able these days to not only cherish the moments when I feel fully alive and present, but I can cherish the moments when my body's going, oh my God, danger, Will Robinson, danger, there is a danger. And my brain is going, there isn't really. But I'm able to meet the sensations in my body with a thanks and a compassion. And I think it's that thanks and compassion for all of the ways that my body shows up that's really sort of been so fundamentally life-changing for me. So that's sort of my long and short story of meditation. It's such a hard one, because I think you realize that it's the ways that it can break you open are bigger than what you think. They're bigger than what we hear. It's more than getting clarity of thought or providing a place for relaxation. I think it provides you an opportunity to live life in a whole different way.
So beautiful. I'm getting all sorts of sensations and emotions just hearing your story and almost reveling in it, if that's okay, of a term to use, because having met Alison and knowing that she's been a part of my journey too,
Yeah.
big love to that woman. I'm like getting emotional just thinking
Oh,
about it, right?
yes. Yes. I'm with
Hope
you.
she
I'm
gets to
with
hear
you.
this.
Yeah.
um, but also, a few things that I picked up from what you were saying at the start of your story, speaking about, behaving and what even is that, like the box
Yes.
that we get kept in that probably began the whole anxiety driving response or program initially of needing to respond to these rules and these um, guidelines that are set by the adults around us when we're little that were to keep us safe in inverted commas at that time in our lives. And then we get to challenge those. It's one of my favorite practices that we did with Alison on our teacher training was what rules were set for you? And now how can you challenge those? Because you're the adult, like you get to change that rule, change that belief. So what even is behaving and being a good girl? And like, can we just, excuse my language, fuck that off because we get to just
I'm
be
with you
us
on that.
and we get to
Oh,
rewrite that
definitely.
story. So really, really cool. That was like one of the things that really stood out to me just when you were sharing about that. But so much more than that is the shift that you felt in yourself. And I'm trying to think back to whether I was at that same workshop. Was that at Wynnum, that one?
Yes, it was. It was. I had never been out to Wynnum before to that yoga studio as well. It was a completely unusual experience and
Yeah.
day. So
In
yeah, it was. It was.
2017? Do you
Oh, it might
remember?
have been. Yes, you very well may have been in the room.
Yes, because that was the day that I did my Reiki level 1 and I was doing my yoga teacher training that year. And I remember it being a really, really powerful. Oh, I'm trying to remember if it was that exact one. Anyway, it doesn't really matter for the listeners, but
Yeah,
um, it's so cool to just be a part of that and know that that has been your experience, and then to mirror that myself as well through a similar but different journey. Um, there was something else that I wanted to say, but I'm sure it will come back to me. And that's what I love about these conversations is that they can just flow, and that term intuition or innate or instinctive gives you permission to just be as you are, showing up and meeting yourself where you're at and just being okay with that in any given moment. And the fear that arises, oh, that's what it was, as you were talking about, celebrating that discomfort and going, oh, yeah, I feel that. I see that. And leaning into and supporting that and going, but I've got you. And being
yeah,
your own biggest cheerleader and your own biggest support. And that is so powerful. And often when I listen to other people talk about intuition, I'm like, oh, I can understand what you mean. But I know there's so many people that are where we used to be that are still so far away from themselves that they do not even know how to get there.
yeah.
So, what would be your advice to somebody listening to this who's like, I love the sound of all of this, but the only time I've ever felt like that is when I'm like 2 bottles deep in red wine or whatever it might be. Like I'm numbing, so I feel good. How do we get there just living in the moment in our real selves, in our real bodies?
I think it's almost about starting slow. I think sometimes when you sort of go, oh, there's something I want to explore, there's something new that I want to do, there's this sort of sense of rush that I have to get in and I have to do this quickly. And that definitely hasn't been my experience. It was one step, one meditation, one exploration at a time. And the big part of it was being able to sort of say, there are no rules. And I think for me, being in meditation and being told there are no rules, this is about you honoring you, was probably one of the first places that I had ever had that experience. And that's quite unusual an experience to sort of have. And I think it takes time to be able to soften into that. And it is that softening that has the impact. I think that it's time spent understanding what welcoming means. It means understanding our nervous system. It means understanding our bodies. It means understanding who we are as humans, that we have so many ranges of different instincts. Like we want a home, we want to rest, but we want to play. And also that there are so many different parts of us, and they're the magic that actually makes us a human being. I would sort of say for me that the two game changers were, one, that sense of understanding my body, understanding what my body did in meditation, understanding how my nervous system reacts across all of life when it's relaxing at rest, or when it's wanting to be active, and when it's wanting to protect me. Um, and also, I think the other component for me that was really important was compassion. And I can remember the first time that outside of meditation, I actually felt compassion. And it was in the hallway, which is just down here. And I'd come back from a day at work, and I'd had to speak, had to do some form of public speaking. And I was really tired, and I was absolutely exhausted. And for me, that's always a trigger for going, or the inner critic sort of says, hang on, how are we going here? And I remember stopping, and I remember putting my hand on my heart. And for the first time, just saying to myself the simple words that I see you and I hear you. And it actually gives me goosebumps still remembering, because my whole body just softened, and was able to sort of say that, you're really tired, hey? Like, do you need some space? Do you need some rest? Like, do you need somebody to hold you? What do you need from me right now? And that simple action, that simple moment, I think explains for me that game part of one of the biggest game changers of this space. It's being able to recognize that you're a human being who has all of these experiences, and greet yourself with love and tenderness. And I think once you start to do that more, once you start to welcome and you start to feel and you start to sense the world around you in a different way, your body starts to speak to you, and you start listening, and you start getting the nudges. You start really being able to recognize the strong yeses from the hard no's, because you're taking that time to listen. And when it talks to you, you're stepping back, and you're not trying to tick the box or do the thing. You're actually sort of saying, like, tell me the story. Tell me the story, and tell me what you need. And the more that you open up to asking those questions, I think the more the nudges and the whispers start to come in, and more you start to trust them as well.
Which is then a deepening of our intuition.
Yeah, very much
So
so.
good. And I love that you used the word simple when you were talking about that practice of compassion, because when people hear it, but they haven't quite fully tapped into the embodiment of the practice yet, it might sound too simple. But once you start to take that space and that time and really greet yourself and meet yourself as a loved one rather than the mean inner self critic,
Yes.
it's so powerful and it's so potent, and it is simple, but people, even us, we still forget probably to do it at all times. And it does require potentially conscious effort at times to have those moments of, how can I honor you? What do you need? In the same way that we would for our children or our partner, or anyone else that we care about and love. And when we do that for ourselves first and foremost, the ripple effect of that into the world around us is so powerful, because we are worthy of giving ourselves that compassion and that love and that space. It's wild. It's so wild.
It
So I
is.
guess I feel like we've kind of jumped ahead a little bit in making an assumption that people understand what innate and instinctive meditation is. So do you want to give like your definition of our style of meditation?
Yes, yeah, very happy to. I think generally meditation is thought of in so very many ways. Like physically, it is that sort of sense of being a deep rest while maintaining a level of alertness. Like that's what's happening in your body. And if you dive a little deeper and if you go start Googling, you'll see everything through from definitions that are around controlling your bodies and your minds, creating blank spaces, through to finding places of rest. And at the next level down to that, there's also a definition that's really about, and I think this is probably one of Alison's definite words, like luxuriating, where you luxuriate in your own being and you're enjoying yourself shamelessly. Like you've got polar opposite definitions of meditation. And I probably definitely err on the side of like, let's go into this in a completely shameless way. For me, how I look at this style of meditation is, and I could use some corporate speak here, it is person-centered. If you're in the corporate world, person-centered is the buzzword, but that's what this style of meditation is. But deeper than that, it's a homecoming. And that's why I think it's such a powerful tool for developing your intuition. It's about returning to you, because when we meditate, we're having the most intimate conversation that we can possibly have with anybody, and one of the most intimate conversations that we can have with ourselves. So for me, this style of meditation is about creating a space where you can be and honor you and who you are and what matters to you, and surround yourself with care and nourishment. It's sort of stepping meditation away from just being mindful to being heartful, to being senseful, to being soulful, to being whole of lifeful, because you're welcoming, you're embodying, you're feeling into your body, I suppose is what I sort of mean by embodying. You're connecting to your body, to your internal wisdom. You're welcoming everything that arises, and you're greeting yourself with compassion. And sometimes that compassion can be, as I sort of spoke about earlier, that really tender, oh my God, I'm here for you. But other times it can be a bit more action orientated. It can be protective. You can sort of say, oh, I'm not feeling safe in this moment. Like, what steps do I need to take in meditation, which then flows to out of life, to remind my body that it's safe. It's safe in this moment. It's safe in this space. Because
That's
when we're
so
in
beautiful.
meditation, as you'd sort of know, everything can arise. And it's very normal for everything to arise, from your to-do list to memories from the past to what you'd like to be doing next. That's how our body enters a state of deep rest, especially an active state of deep rest. And sometimes you can get lost. You can get lost in that space, and you can make a choice. Do I either stay there, or do I need to do something different in meditation for my body? Do I need to come back to my breath, to the ground beneath me, to what I might be meditating on at the moment? And yeah, it's about really taking a truly honoring approach to meditation and to you and to all of the aspects of your life.
Yeah, so good. And I also think of it as like permission.
Yeah.
Permission to delve into parts of yourself that may be hidden or hadn't been welcomed in wholesomeness before. And it's so liberating. I'm sure you've come up against this or even felt it yourself, where when we initially look into meditation, or we've experienced meditation, like you were saying, when you were using that app and you were kind of almost forcing yourself to do this practice because you've been told it's good for you, and suffering through it because we're blocking or we're clearing thoughts. Now, we're not saying if that style of meditation works for you, that is beautiful. But
Yes.
the permission here is, if that's not working for you, then there is another style for you, because there are as many styles of meditation as there are people in the world. It is literally unique to you, and it gets to be your own experience, your own practice. And I love what you were saying about, you're thinking about your to-do list, or you're thinking about what you want to do next, or there's this flow of was it the 8 R's, and there was rest and remembering and all of these different things. Now, the only R that we really want to avoid through those processes or those rhythms of meditation is rumination. When it's not serving us, then okay, do we bring ourselves, like you say, back to our breath or away from that thought process? Or, if it feels safe to do so, we go into it and process those emotions and integrate them and come out the other side of them with a lesson and a blessing to reflect on, to move forward with strength and resilience, rather than getting stuck in this pattern of, oh, I'm not good enough because I am stuck in this place. So yeah, it's really beautiful to hear it explained. I love this topic and hearing it explained in so many different ways. And so if you're hearing this definition of this version of meditation for the first time, if you're listening to this episode and you're thinking, this is wild, what are they even talking about? This is extremely liberating. This is eye-opening. This is uncomfortable. This is not the way I was told to do it. It's breaking all of the rules. Work through that with support of somebody if you need a space holder. Janene and myself, we do coach in this space, so we would love to hear from you if you do need a bit of support through this. And also, I was going to say and also, how can you meet yourself with that compassion that we're speaking of, that Janene so beautifully explained? And I have a little story, because sometimes we don't even realize the anger or the frustration that we're carrying for ourselves, and then reflecting that and like shining it around to everybody along the way. So coming back to beautiful Inner Bliss, where all of this started, Inner Bliss Yoga Studio, beautiful Amy and Matt and Alison and all of those wonderful people. And I was on a retreat in Bali with Amy and Alison. And I definitely had heard about this self-forgiveness and this idea of giving, inner compassion. This was 2018, maybe, or it could have even been 2000. I can't remember. Anyway, doesn't matter. Somewhere along my journey, I was already a teacher and I was in Bali for this beautiful retreat, and I wanted to get pregnant. Like, I wanted to be a mum. I think we were already married, and it was that next phase of, this is what I'm ready for. And there was this grief and this heaviness that I was carrying around not being pregnant yet. I was almost angry at myself for not being there yet, even though it's something that's so out of our control. Like, there's an aspect of it that we can do the deed and hope that the miracle happens. But it wasn't until something came up on that retreat, in that beautiful space of meditation and yoga, that connection, yoga to yoke, to connect, that inner connection, where I realized that I needed to forgive myself. I needed to hold compassion for myself for something that I actually didn't do wrong, but that was this inbuilt program or mechanism within me from so many years of not doing the right thing, or not being the good girl, or getting told off for doing whatever it might be, that then we hold on to as we become adults, and we carry out these programs and these templates. And it takes something like a podcast or a retreat or a moment of, your workshop that you went to, that we were both at, that allows us to hear the right thing at the right time and give ourselves permission. That permission, that was kind of the whole point of this tangent, to come back to what is actually important, and how can I give myself a break so that I can come into joy and happiness and love and excitement. And it can take just one thing. And it's so crazy, once that happened and I released that and I felt so much lighter, then getting pregnant was so much easier, because I wasn't carrying that stress and that tension through that next phase of my journey. So yeah, it's so lovely to share these personal stories, because I think many people can relate when they hear the explanations and the journey that we explain, but then also how it's affected us in our own lives, and that we can relate. And this is a very felt experience by everybody when they choose to honor that. So obviously are in the corporate space, you're a mama, you're juggling all the things, and then you found this beautiful gift that you are also very good at holding space for others and being that mirror for others to find their truth in this practice. How does that fit in with the busyness of what is already happening in your life? Do you find that you've found a way to weave the two together in the corporate? Because when I speak to people who are still in the corporate world, it's still very much not people centered. And it is still very much, which blows my mind because I've never been in the corporate world. So I'm like, what do you mean they don't let you do things? Like, what do you mean? You're a sovereign human being with autonomy. Like, you need to stand your ground and, stand in your power. So how have you been able to complement these two worlds and bring more of your wholesomeness into the corporate realm if you've needed to?
I think for me, when I said earlier, like the teacher training I did with Alison in particular was almost one of the best leadership courses that I could have done. A full surprise to me from that sort of side of things. And I think the reason for that was that allowed me to step into more me. Because when you're in that space, I think that you feel like there is an expectation that you will lead in a certain way, that you will lead in very stereotypical male ways, that sort of, and that your focus really should be on more that masculine sort of energy and all of the wonderful things that can come from dropping into your sort of masculine space. And I think for me, what I was finding before that was as I was stepping into leadership, I wasn't sure who I was because I knew that I wasn't a stereotypical traditional leader. That's not how I saw the world. It's not how I saw the people around me. And it felt, it didn't feel like it belonged in my body. So what I suppose for me is the more that I was able to come home and sort of understand really who I am and what was important to me is that I started to weave um, that sort of the feminine, the flow, the intuition, I wouldn't say necessarily always the softness, because it can also be a fierceness as well of sort of that more traditional feminine energy sort of into that space. And I ended up at a point sort of going, I lead differently. I lead differently to the people who have led before me. There are some things and some ways that we might be similar, but there are other ways that we're different. And that's okay. And I stepped into that space. I very much stepped into the space that for me, leadership is around supporting the people that I work with. It's around them. It's not around me. It's around how do I actually help and support them to be the best that they can be. And once I realized that, it changed my whole experience of the trust that I had in myself, in how I led and how I showed up in the work that I do. It's a really hard one to sort of drop into the nuances, but I think for me, there was one moment where, and you might be able to tell compassion's a big one for me. It's full life value. Is that I was sitting near a lady who was more junior, if you took a strict hierarchical sort of perspective to the world. And I could hear that she'd been having a really hard conversation with somebody. And she got off the phone and you could tell that it had touched her. It was a really hard moment for her. And she just looked up at me and she was a little bit teary and she's just like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know this is not professional. I'm like, hey, like the conversation that you've just had has moved you. It is very human. It's very human to have responses that include feeling teary. It's okay to be impacted by that. And it's okay for me to see that. And I'm not thinking anything at the moment other than, do you need some more support right now? And do you need help from me? And are you okay? There was nothing in me that was judging her. There was nothing in me that was questioning her professionalism. It's around sort of going, how can I bring that part of me that that sees a human being in everybody that I meet into that space, and being okay doing that, rather than, take your tears somewhere else, love. We don't cry in this space. We don't feel that, which was the traditional space. It's going, actually, all of you's welcome here.
Yeah. That is so wild to me that that is still even a thing. But I love hearing how you held space for her and guided her through that so beautifully.
Mm.
I actually think it's more professional to allow your emotions to be shown and felt and seen. And I mean, even the science and the research behind that is, we know the domino effect of you let people cry, let people, they don't need permission to
Right.
experience the bodily function and those emotions. But like you say, in that space, it was always weak from a masculine perspective to
Yep.
allow the emotion to be seen, to be shown, even in parenting, situations. Everyone has their own journey, their own story, but it's quite common for one or both parents to try and shut those emotions down, like stop crying, stop making a fuss, don't do that. Um, Put a smile back on and let's pretend that
Yeah.
everything's hunky dory. And it's like, no, when you sit in that, but then also the crying actually releases cortisol through your tears. You're actually healing the process and closing off that stress response cycle by allowing those tears to flow so that we can come back to a calm, neutral, happy nervous system,
Mm.
a regulated nervous system. So yeah, I love hearing that story, and at the same time it frustrates me a little bit.
It does.
It's
It's that space, and I think it's probably goes back to those, what we were talking about earlier, the expectations around who we are, how we lead, what's important, and it's sort of doing, I suppose it's that question, like, what's mine and what's yours, or what's somebody else's. And for me, there's been a lot of questioning around, I know what's important to me as a leader. Recognizing shared humanity is one of my values. Um, the other component piece is knowing that it's okay for me to trust and work from a place of intuition rather than always having to be logic.
yes.
Because sometimes it's just like, there is no reason that, a decision shouldn't be made, but there is a gut feeling. There's a gut feeling that, for me now, I listen to and sort of go, hang on, hold on, something doesn't feel right here. I'm not taking that next step until I feel comfortable, because I think it just takes a couple of times where you ignore that and you sort of go, oh, what ends up being the outcome, where you go, actually, my body's giving me a message and I'm going to listen to it.
Yeah.
Which is a very different space, rather than sort of that sort of more traditional, I've ticked off all of the boxes. Yes, that.
I've done the policy, the
Yeah,
procedure.
move on, move on. Yeah.
Yes. And what a breath of fresh air, not only for your team, but also, I guess, for you. And then honoring your body in your work as well. That can make your whole environment a much happier and healthier place to be. And then on from that, I loved what you were saying about leadership is actually not about the leader, it's about the people that you're leading. And I mean, it's something that I see in my low tox shampoo business is when I first started it, it was about me. I needed an extra stream of income. And it was a very like selfish reason that I started. And then there was this subtle but so profound a shift. And it wasn't about me, and it actually never was. But I was guided here for a reason so that I can now be of service to the next person that needs this, to the next woman that needs to be lifted up by me. Like I get to be the lighthouse that can show them the way. And it sounds like you're very similar in your approach. And
Yes.
it's such a beautiful way to stand strong and firm and grounded, which clearly you are now. I don't know you pre this journey, but from what you've said, it's been a journey. And literally like the lighthouse, that steadfastness, that strength, but also with grace and humility and lightness and shining just as you are in your truth, not trying to be anyone or do anything, but just being. And it's allowing people to also have permission to still shine as their best selves. It's such a beautiful reciprocation or an exchange of conscious energy. And sometimes it's unconscious, because in you showing up as you are, it has this beautiful domino effect into your team and giving them permission to then go home and do that with their families. And then they're rubbing shoulders with other people in the community. It is literally profound. And guys, it all starts with you, right? Taking that time to be, if you want to call it selfish, I don't know, like depending on what definition you have around that word, but coming back to taking time with yourself, taking time to sit maybe in discomfort to start with, of finding who you are, or finding a guided meditation that helps you to feel safer and held in that space, and starting to really tune into what is that yes in my body, what is that hard no in my body, and how can I take those simple steps to move forward from here, because it does have such a powerful effect into all areas of our lives. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was gorgeous. And so we'll start to wrap up, so I'm mindful of the time. There's one question that we like to ask a lot of our interviewees, guests, whatever you want to call it. And it's, if there was no limitation around time or money or energy, what would you want to be doing right now? Like, what's the kind of, I guess, impact or legacy that you want to leave that is your highest good?
The legacy is probably the easier question. I'm doing a lot of exploring around the first one, around what is it that I would love to be doing now? Because if I'd love to be doing it, then why aren't I doing it, is the question. So for me, that's definitely a place where I'm diving in. As you sort of say, I work in two worlds at the moment, and both of them enrich me in different ways. And I think the commonality between both of them is that I'm able to connect in and I'm able to support others. I'm sort of that sense of, is there a legacy? I'd love to be remembered as a person who could see the humanity in others and could guide them back to being able to see that within themselves, regardless of the space that I might be doing it in.
I love that. That is so powerful. And if there was anything else that you would want to share with our audience today, what kind of message or little tidbit would you want to pass on?
Don't be afraid of meditation. I've had some clients come in where I think you can sort of tell there's a fear, there's a sense of I can't about it. It doesn't need to be scary. It doesn't need to be restrictive. Meditation can be nourishing and it can support your well-being, but it will also bring in so much aliveness and pleasure. And it can be a way that you can come home. That's really sort of, for me, meditation's a way that you can come home to yourself and live life from a place where you want to you, rather than the what's yours and theirs and everybody else's. It's you live your life some space from what's mine.
So good. I am feeling all of the full body yeses sensations throughout our entire conversation, and I just love it. Call them goosebumps, call them tingles, whatever. You guys, if you want to tap more into this, if you want to explore it in more depth, find Janene, come chat to me, find Ali. You know, we really truly love this, and we want to share it with as many people as possible. So if you do want to find Janene on Instagram, her handle is jt.meditation.and.coaching, but I'll pop it in the show notes so you guys can find her in one easy click on Spotify. And yeah, I've just really loved chatting with you. It's been so much fun to reconnect in this way, and I appreciate your time and energy.
Well, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. Listen, if you love what you heard here today, I would love for you to leave a super quick rating and a review. This helps the show get discovered by new people that need to hear what we have to share. Be sure to take a screenshot of today's episode and shout us out on Instagram, and we will shout you right back. You can find us on Instagram handles It's Stacey Turner and the.emma.mcdonald. If you'd like to find additional resources or work with either of us, then DM us on one of these handles today.